YouTube, what's up? We're live. Welcome, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. Happy Thursday. Happy almost February now. Where to begin? Everyone's doing well out there. I'm going to share a few things today about the pelvic floor, specifically for men. And this is something that I've really been diving into the past, recent time. Before I say that, I'll get right into this, right? So your pelvic floor is very much, related to your sexual response. It's related to your nervous system. It's related to your organs, your mind state. And so this pattern that, I had in my body personally, and I'm seeing a lot of men, a lot of other men have it as well, is this pattern of hypertension. I talk about this a lot, right? But it's really becoming clear to me just how important this is and how much I would say, uh, somewhat not exactly lack of awareness, but maybe the wrong focus in what a lot of men are what a lot of people are teaching as far as male sexual practices, in that the kind of the go-to advice for men to improve their sexual performance and their sexual health of their pelvic floor and their penis as well is to do Kegel exercises, which is a squeezing. And so for me, back in 2013, I read Multi-Orgasmic Man by Montauk Chia, and what's the advice in this book? It's to do a lot, squeeze these muscles every day, squeeze as hard as you can, do that for long periods of time throughout the day. So I spent about 8 years doing really intense Kegel training. My pelvic floor got pretty strong, right? But it started to become aware. It started to come into my awareness that this was actually not doing anything good for me as far as my sexual experience. I eventually noticed that when I would squeeze my pelvic floor during sex, which is the advice of a lot of tantra teachers, even Taoist sexual practitioners, to squeeze the pelvic floor during sex, I noticed when I did this, it was actually it made my penis a lot more sensitive, and it made me approach the point of ejaculation a lot more quickly if I wasn't doing other exercises to draw the energy out. And eventually, I started experimenting with, okay, well, what happens if I relax my pelvic floor? What happens if I do a reverse Kegel? And instantly, um, I was able to massively improve my sexual endurance. Not like it was bad at this point. I'd had a lot of training, but it became completely effortless to have a lot of sexual stimulation and not feel like I needed to ejaculate. It wasn't, it became really easy. I was like, wow, this whole time I've been doing all this squeezing, all these Kegels, and it's actually not doing anything good, right? And so the thing for, the pelvic floor for men, it really, it connects to a lot of the other muscle groups in the body as well. It's very much connected to the abdominal muscles as well, and like the glutes. I mean, it kind of connects to your whole system. And so I had this idea that, a lot of other people saying, like, basically your pelvic floor holds in your organs, which is true, right? And that if you don't do Kegel exercises, basically it's going to get really loose and everything's going to sag and you're going to have like incontinence and things like that. But the reality is, for most men, I mean, for most people in a body, if you are moderately active, it's kind of like if you're walking, if you walk around all day, you spend time standing, your feet get tense, your feet get tight. And so for most people, if you have a moderate level of activity, physical activity, then your pelvic floor is perfectly fine as far as strength wise, and you don't need to go the extra mile to do Kegels, right? That can make the problem far worse, especially if you spend a lot of time sitting down, which a lot of men in this world do. And that's kind of what I noticed is the men who spend. Well, I was seeing this pattern in men going through my course and things like that, where men who spend a lot of time sitting down, have kind of more of a sedentary lifestyle, they often experience premature ejaculation and pelvic floor hypertension the worst. And so it's like, you spend all this time sitting down. It's kind of like when you spend a lot of time standing, all your weight's on your feet, right? And your feet get pretty sore. Your feet get pretty tight. All the fascia and the tissue gets really bound up with tension. That's what happens to your pelvic floor when you spend a lot of time sitting down. It gets tight. It gets bound up. So doing Kegels on top of that is just, you're winding up all this tension in your body. That tension state is directly connected to your nervous system, right? Your central nervous system, and the being in that sympathetic fight or flight state. Tension patterns cause this fight or flight response to the body, where you're mentally tense, it causes physical tension. You're physically tense, it causes mental tension, and it kind of creates this downward spiral where men have these tension patterns. You're stressed out, you spend too much time sitting, you don't exercise enough, whatever, and your pelvic floor gets really, really tight. This causes premature ejaculation because this tightness in the pelvic floor translates to hypersensitivity in the penis. Like if you're the type of guy who your penis just gets touched a little bit and you feel like you're going to ejaculate, it's very, very likely you have serious, imbalances in the pelvic floor, specifically a lot of tension here, right? And I lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that? So, and also it often means that your sympathetic nervous system is very, very active, right? Which ejaculation, as I've said many times, ejaculation is a function of the sympathetic nervous system. So all this tightness in the pelvic floor, all this tension in your mind and your body, it's going to basically make it so you're right on the edge of ejaculating as soon as you begin sexual activity. So this is, again, this is such an often unconscious area of our body, right? I mean, most people don't have a ton of body awareness as it is, but especially this area, because we're often not really comfortable occupying our sexual center. There's often a lot of guilt in this area. There's a lot of like shame. There's a lot of like body shame, like, oh, this is my naughty, my private parts, right? And so we're afraid to occupy this space. So we often have no idea what's actually going on down here, except when we're sexually aroused. Even then, we don't have a complete understanding of what's happening down there. And so for me, it was this journey of really bringing more awareness to, I mean, really my full body, but especially this pelvis, this sexual center, my pelvic floor area. And when I started to do practices to release all these tension patterns, which was actually quite a journey. And as I started doing this, I started to realize how much is just like constantly squeezed in that area. Like I was having times where after sex, like I was having some pain in this area. And that's what really drew me to look at this like whole doing Kegels and tension exercises. And so as I started to unwind all this tension in my pelvic floor, it dramatically improved my erection quality. Not like it was bad before, but it definitely, improved overall. It improved my sexual endurance, my ability to not have to like kind of micromanage my arousal level, right? With the techniques of like drawing and things like that, which is a great thing to do. But I found that as I really loosened up my pelvic floor, I could just kind of, and I feel like I didn't have to be in control so much during sex. It was just effortless to get into this full body state where the sexual energy is just moving through my body, which makes sense because tension in Chinese medicine is understood that tension blocks the flow of qi in the body. And so whenever you're tense, wherever there's tension in the body, the qi is not going to flow so smoothly. So of course, when you're squeezing your pelvic floor, it locks up the flow of sexual energy. And so I'm at the point now, I'm wondering like, how did this become this thing where, people are teaching like lots of Kegels, tension, squeeze to move the sexual energy? Because in my experience, my sexual energy moved much, much better when I stopped squeezing down there, right? So I feel that maybe this was a misunderstanding of some of the classical teachings, because there's other ways to engage the perineum kind of energetically without actually squeezing it, right? We get into this a lot in Taoist internal alchemy practices, but anyways, kind of the solution, or if you're struggling with this whole pelvic floor dysfunction, pelvic floor hypertension, I'll share some tools that have really, really helped me. Static stretches, stretching this area. Some of my favorite things I do every day is kind of a deep squatting pose like Malasana in yoga. You get down to a deep squat and just breathe into the belly, and that like really breathing into the pelvic floor. And as you do that, you'll feel your pelvic floor expand. And it might even make you feel like you have to poop, right? So, be careful about this, but I spend a couple minutes doing this and it really, really expands my pelvic floor, really, really releases this tension. And that's been really, really helpful for me. Also, it's like happy baby pose, which is kind of the same thing, except you're on your back, look that up, Google happy baby pose. Same thing, lay on your back, hold this posture, breathe deeply into your pelvic floor, let it start to open up and expand, and it'll start to release some of those tension patterns. There's another exercise, butterfly stretch. I think that's what it's called. Where you lay on your back and you put your heels, or like your soles of your feet together, and your knees go out to the side, and you just lay there and relax and let the knees just float down with gravity. It can feel extremely intense. Like I had a lot of tension in my right hip, so when I started doing the stretch, it was like really, really intense. But as it started to release and open up, I felt my pelvic floor just like releasing and getting really relaxed. And so just sharing some tools with you guys. Also, reverse Kegels are great. Basically, what I started doing was throughout the day, I would notice when I was holding tension in my pelvic floor, when I was squeezing it, which became this kind of unconscious pattern that was always there. This tension was always there. And so I started to become aware of this. And when I noticed it, I would do like a reverse Kegel, which is kind of a slight pushing out. Take a deep breath into that area and just relax. And so just becoming aware of this, noticing these tension patterns you have in the pelvic floor, which are often contributing to sexual dysfunctions, as well as kind of states of tension in your mind and your body, states of anxiety, states of like, stress and fearfulness, whatever. So these things are very, very related. And that's why I share so many different tools. Sexual kung fu it's a very holistic. We approach things from different angles. It's not all about sex, right? That's part of it. Reclining butterfly pose. Thanks, Simon. Sex is, it's one part of it, but like sex relates to every area of our life, right? And our sexuality and our sexual energy. And you want to kind of address all these different things, like working with the mind. What are your mental patterns? Like, where is your mind at throughout the day, right? Learning to balance your mind so you don't just have all these random thoughts taking on, a journey. Working with the breath. Do you have poor breathing habits? You're always breathing in your chest, or does your belly naturally come low? Does your breath naturally come low and the belly smooth and open? That's another thing that will contribute to being in a more parasympathetic, calm state is getting this belly breathing, but not from you having to micromanage it all day, but from it eventually becoming natural, which happens when you do certain breathwork practices, right? And of course, Qigong is a phenomenal tool. It's really helpful for balancing your nervous system. It really calms you down, gets you in the parasympathetic state, but most importantly, it circulates your chi very effectively, balances your entire system. It's amazing, right? And of course, doing the direct sexual practices to transform your pathway of how your sexual energy expresses itself. Which again, for most men, they want to project their sexual energy outwards 24/7. Like, I need this other thing to like ejaculate into or on, whatever. But the new kind of paradigm of sexual kung fu training is to create this internal pathway to where your sexual energy becomes integrated with the other centers of your body, and it charges you up. You start to work with it rather than just it builds to an uncomfortable point and you release it. Instead of that, you allow it to be refined within you. So hope this is helpful, guys. So these are some things I've really been diving into, and I'm gonna get into Q&A session, so feel free to send your questions. And something else I want to share really quick is that got a lot of big things planned this year. I'm going to be doing a series of master classes on various subjects this year. One of them is going to be like a comprehensive pelvic floor health class. I'll be sharing a lot of exercises, a lot of tools to balance your pelvic floor. And I'm also working on a new course right now. I'm really excited about it. I'll be sharing more about that, but there's a lot of new things in the work this year. It's going to be a big year for sexual kung fu. So yeah, hope you guys are doing well, and we're getting some questions. So feel free to send in your questions. Corey is asking, does your sexual energy ever give you insomnia? It certainly has in the past. Maybe if I had a lot of sexual desire that wasn't really reaching a point of completion, I felt a little frustrated, in the past. Um, More likely for me, it was when I had been doing too much, kind of drawing too much sexual energy up into my head, aroused sexual energy. Like, I noticed personally, I can't do like self cultivation, any sort of self stimulation, like within a few hours of going to bed, or it'll keep me awake. Just that fiery male sexual energy. However, I can have sex with my partner like right before going to sleep, and it's fine as long as I'm not like forcefully drawing the energy up to my head a lot. I avoid bringing my energy up to my head close to bedtime. But there's a lot of things you can do. I have a whole nightly routine that helps me kind of wind down and calm down for sleep. Avoiding electronic screens is important. Doing some stretching practices, like the stretching exercises I just mentioned, are great to do before bed because they'll really, really calm your nervous system. I like to do like deep breathing, like breathing practices, calming breath work, not like stuff. Cold showers, ice baths. That's something I like to do in the evening as well. It really calms my system down. Just having like a routine that helps you get out of your head into your body, get into that parasympathetic state, and sleep much better. Exalted Body says, is your work primarily for men? Most of what I'm teaching is for men. I mostly do focus towards men, but I do have some content for women as well. My partner Mariah and I created a course for women. It's called Multi-Orgasmic Goddess, and Mariah also created a free guide for women. It's on my Instagram bio. You can find more information there. Earthworth says, micromanaging my arousal level, LOL, hashtag relatable. Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of part of the training, those, because kind of the sequence of training, at least in my experience, was when I first got into sexual kung fu, it's like, okay, I had to be, took a lot of awareness, a lot of focus in what was happening in my body during sex or self stimulation to not make sure my arousal didn't get out of control, and I would go towards ejaculatory orgasm, right? Because you're creating an entirely new pathway of how your arousal builds and where your sexual energy moves during arousal, right? So there can be a period of months or years where when you're in sex, you have to be really beyond, okay, I got to move this energy here, got to move it out of the genitals, got to relax my mind, keep my breath just right, and if you get out of that, it's over. It's usually not that intense, but it can be in the very beginning, especially if you really struggle with premature ejaculation. But eventually, with training, especially when you're doing the other practices, you're doing qigong, grounding, all the stuff that really kind of rewires your energetic system, you quickly arrive at the point where you don't have to be so micromanaging with it, right? You can relax. It's more when like your arousal starts to get really high that you're like, okay, time to step in a bit more, really focus on circulating. Okay, now I'm good. I can just kind of relax, connect with my partner, and just feel what's happening. There's a lot of different aspects to it. Rendell Frank says, would men who spend a lot of time sitting down be able to reduce the amount of tension buildup in the pelvic floor by keeping their legs open wide? That may help a little bit, but overall, you're just kind of sitting with all this pressure there, right? What I recommend is if you have to spend a lot of time sitting down, if you have a desk job or something like that, use a stand-up desk. Really, really, really helpful. Also sitting on a physio ball that engages your core more. There's much, much less pressure on your pelvic floor. Way better option than sitting in a chair, I would say. And kind of sit in a squat. Like I'm on a chair right now, but I could I'll do this. Maybe not my office chair. It kind of it's a little wobbly, but I'm squatting right now, sitting. You can do that. Spend 5 minutes every hour doing that. It'd be really, really helpful. Oh yeah. Exalted Body says some of the tips today were informative for women also. Yeah, I mean, obviously this relates just as much to women, pelvic floor, everyone. Again, if you have a body, pelvic floor is important. I'm personally not aware of like what the specific patterns women tend to have with their pelvic floors. I know that with women who've been through childbirth and things like that, there's often more of like a looseness pattern in the pelvic floor, so they have to work to kind of retighten the pelvic floor. I'm not sure if right now if hypertension in the pelvic floor is a big issue for women. That's something that I should learn more about for sure. But again, for men, it definitely is the case. Okay, here's a couple very, very fitting questions here. One is these are both about microcosmic orbit on Instagram and YouTube. These questions are okay. So Sweet Alice says, what goes hand in hand with microcosmic orbit breathing? Any practices that amplify the benefits? So first of all, I recommend not thinking about the microcosmic orbit as a breathing practice, because then you get stuck on the breath aspect, which is the more superficial kind of physical aspect of it, right? Breath doesn't necessarily have to be in conjunction with how you run the orbit, right? Like a lot of teachers say, you must breathe up the back and breathe down the front, or you must breathe in as you move down the front, exhale up the back. That's actually not important at all. It's kind of a training tool in the beginning to help your mind focus on the practice. The energy transcends the breath, and eventually you move it just with your mind. It doesn't matter what your breathing pattern is overall, as long as you're not holding your breath. But you asked for practice to amplify the benefits, definitely, and that is working with the Dantian building. If you don't have a Dantian established, you don't have a reservoir of chi built up in the Dantian through basically hours and hours and hours and hours of sitting stillness practice. I'll explain how to do this, but if you don't have the Dantian really built, you're not going to have the same, we could say, voltage going through your microcosmic orbit. So you can still do the orbit, get great benefits from it, but it's the difference between having like a little bit of a vapor going through like a hose versus like full on 50 psi whatever pressure of water just moving through that hose. you'll have more chi pressure when you build the dantian, right? The dantian is like your energetic battery, and a couple of the systems I studied in when I was first beginning completely basically skipped through the Dantian work, I would say. Like there was a lot of talk about it, obviously, because it's, an important part of Taoist practice. But it was basically, yeah, the Dantian's there. Just kind of visualize it. Imagine there's an energy ball there. That's it. That's your Dantian. And so after years of that, I learned the real Dantian building practices, which really does involve bringing your mind into this area and holding it there for a long period of time, really anchoring your mind to this area. And after doing that, I started to feel my Dantian. It was like it feels this heat, this like bubbling. They refer to the Dantian as a cauldron in internal alchemy for a good reason, because it feels like a cauldron when you have it established, especially when you're doing like the more alchemical work with it. It's like this bubbly, warm heat. You have it when you feel it. It's tangible. This isn't like something you visualize. It's you feel it tangibly. That's how you know you're on the right path. So with that, I have a practice on my YouTube channel. It's called Dantian breathing. Just look up sexual kung fu Dantian breathing. That's a great practice to start building your Dantian, and that will significantly improve, we could say, the mileage that you get working with the microcosmic orbit. Which brings us to this next question from Reynaldo. Says, how are you aware that you're doing the microcosmic orbit correct? I mean, as long as you're working with it and we have the intention of working with it, it's kind of hard to really go wrong with it, as long as you're not doing something like really, really forceful. Like there's these different practices of like chi packing techniques where you're breathing forcefully and you're like squeezing muscles and like shoving the energy into spots of your body. I don't recommend doing that. It can have some negative side effects, we could say. But overall, if you're working with the orbit, it's you'll probably be getting some benefits from it, right? I don't recommend making it a visualization though. If you're just like, you see your body in your mind and like you imagine this kind of visual image of the orbit, it's not the same as feeling it in your body. Sometimes visualization can help you like feel the area of your body, like you kind of see a lightness current, but more importantly, your mind being engaged in that space is what will help you to make this happen, right? Microcosmic orbit's not a visualization. It's a feeling sense. It's the mind absorbing into the body, moving the mind through this pathway with your awareness. That's what really helps work with the orbit, not visualizing it. Josh Tubero says, is there a correct amount of time that one would retain semen? It depends on your age, your health, a lot of factors. Basically, if you've been ejaculating recklessly for years and years, which I had been up into my early 20s when I started practicing retention, then I recommend going for as long as you comfortably can to start to help rebuild that gene. Don't get too obsessive with it. That's kind of the mistake men they go from one extreme to the other. I've talked about this a lot, but it's like you go from like, again, just ejaculating every day recklessly to being like, okay, well, I can never ever ejaculate again, and if I do, I failed. You get in this whole guilt trip about it. So just for most men, it depends on your age. Again, if you're 20 years old, I recommend going at least a week in between ejaculations. If you're in your 30s, I recommend going at least 2 weeks between ejaculations. That's a solid, schedule for most men. You'll get benefits of retention that way, and you can do it for longer if you feel comfortable. But it's important, if you do go for longer, that you're doing sexual kung fu techniques. You're working with the microcosmic orbit. You're opening up energy channels. You're doing qigong. Otherwise, you can just amplify unconscious patterns and all these other things. So, yeah. Sweet Alice says, starting from scratch again, but with everything you know now, how long would it take to reach your level again? It's a good question. As far as like energy development I definitely, so I've been at it, for about a decade overall. I would say I've been into energetic practices and I've had a daily practice. I would know the right practices to do and the right way to do them. So I'm sure that I could get where I am now within, 2 or 3 years, maybe. I don't know. It's difficult to say. But this stuff really does take time. For example, I was talking about building the Dantian. It takes, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to really, really do this, which is fine. It's a discipline. It's not something that you can, take a pill and it's done for you. Click on a screen. That's why I like this stuff. It's a true art. It's a true discipline. It's qigong and the internal arts are their technologies. They're internal technologies that each person must develop for themselves. That's how it's been for thousands of years. Sean, 1996 boy says, I haven't had sex in a while. What are some things I can do to prepare for the next time so I don't ejaculate prematurely? My pelvic floor is tight on semen retention. Follow the advice I gave at the beginning of this video. Use the stretches, use the, sexual kung fu practices to, make sure you're doing qigong every day. You're doing your practice every day, channeling your energy, loosening up your pelvic floor, and you'll be in good shape. Practice working with your arousal as well. Kevin is asking, is there a certain spot at the roof of the mouth to put the tongue to close the microcosmic orbit? I sometimes find it hard to guide the energy from the head back down the front channel. What can help? If your tongue's touching the palate, you're solid. Most teachers say just behind the front teeth. Like if you're saying like t, when you make a T sound, like t, or like an L, where your tongue goes, just behind the front teeth. That's fine. And as far as finding it hard to guide the energy from the head back down the front channel, it's very common for men. It was I experienced this too. As for men, I think for most people, actually, I think probably for a lot of women too, it's especially in this age of information and technology, we're in our heads all the time. We're sitting in front of screens. All our energy is going up to our head constantly. And for men, the back channel tends to be very open, typically like this yang energy, this rising fire. It's easy for most guys to raise their energy up to the head, but the front channel tends to be a little more closed down for men. It's very much in line with like our emotions, our vulnerability, like being able to be open to the world, especially our throat. The throat often gets very blocked for people in general, and so it's difficult to sink the energy down. So what helped me was grounding, a lot of grounding practices, working with descending energy, Jian Zhuang practice. I teach it on my YouTube channel, and in deeper depth in my course. And relaxation and just, really working with the microcosmic orbit, and maybe getting in touch with your more kind of yin aspects of yourself, your ability to feel, your ability to be vulnerable and open. Not saying you have to become like a sissy or something like that, but being strong in your masculine, but also being able to be open to your yin side as well, right? Stephen Watts says, how long does it take to charge or build your aura to the point that those in the same room can feel it? You can always feel people's auras. This is why when you go into, you walk into a party or something, you walk into a store, whatever, you walk into a room, there's a bunch of people, you immediately have a sense of each of them. Like you're already like, I don't know, I like this person, or, oh, I find that woman attractive, or you're like, oh, that guy, I don't even know him, but he just seems like a douchebag. You just already get this like sense of people's energy. That's what you're doing. You're reading their aura, you're reading their readout of the physical information. So you don't even have to do energetic practices to have this, right? But when you do certain practices and things like that, it changes the maybe the intensity and the feeling, the flavor of your field. Maybe it becomes more attractive. Something else can happen is it even becomes more repulsive to some people. Like some people just get really pissed off at you for no reason, because if you're more polarized from cultivating your sexual energy, it can be more attractive or more repulsive to people, right? So John Parker says, what exercise would you suggest to get out of your head and relax the nervous system? Meditation is great. Basic breathwork practices, yoga, getting in your body, going for a walk in nature, sitting under a tree, laying on the earth. Qigong is really, really great as well. Tai Chi, a lot of things, a lot of options. Ruhan68 says, how did you get into Tantra? Good question. I had kind of a spiritual awakening. I completely changed the course of my life, when I was 19 years old, and had a Kundalini experience, and it drove me to seek out I just had this download at the time, like, oh, like I need to practice like yoga and like meditation, these like ancient practices. Like all of a sudden I just knew that was the path for me to like continue this kind of spiritual development I was on, and to kind of find some answers and be able to sustain these higher states of consciousness. And part of that became, what is sex? What is this sexual experience and all this? Because I always loved sex. I was always, kind of a sexually obsessed person. I had a very high sex drive, but I didn't know how to manage it very well. And so I remember that I've actually first heard the word Tantra in was the movie, one of those like college, humor movies that came out in like early 2000s. It was American Pie, right? Where this guy's like, oh, I'm learning tantra. It makes sex like one long orgasm. And I heard this in the movie. I was like 13 years old. I'm like, you know? And so eventually in like, um, I, I remember having a hard time finding much information about like tantra and tantric practice. All I could find was like, here's how to give a tantric massage. But I was like, okay, that's, it's like, how do you actually like this energetic orgasms? How do you do that? That I kind of heard a little bit about. And eventually, really what kind of the first real practice that I got was through Montauk Chia's book, Multi-Orgasmic Man. And then I, got into Taoist sexual practices, and I studied with some tantra teachers as well. Yeah. But it was really just this like, how do I bridge my spiritual path with sexuality? Because I don't feel like it's just this dirty thing. I feel like there's a lot of potential to it. Like the orgasmic experience for me was this experience of oneness with the universe. It was amazing, right? Sean says, do you know if Taylor Johnson is semen retention content? Yeah, Taylor's a friend of mine. I met him back in 2016. We both went to Michael Wynn's summer retreat. He's a great guy. He's doing great work. I crashed at his, he had a house in Asheville, kind of this community living space. I crashed his house for a night when I was staying in Asheville. Sweet Alice says, for the Dantian, is it breath work or more energy? In some, you could say in some way that it is breath work, but not the way you probably think. Like you have to breathe, like, okay, breathe into the Dantian. A lot of people teach this stuff like, okay, I'm breathing into the Dantian. I'm breathing into it. That's not going to build the yin field of it, the magnetic container. To do that requires stillness. So your breath does need to be very calm and centered in the abdomen, which is different than kind of forcing abdominal breathing, like as a practice, like, okay, now I'm breathing in my belly. What you really, the formal way to do it is you sit and you just observe your breath, like notice where your breath kind of feels centered from. You kind of follow the various areas of the body until it naturally sinks down into basically to your Dantian. And you just kind of hold your mind there. Simply holding your mind in the Dantian in that stillness state will build Qi there. But there's also another technique where you kind of move your awareness between Qi Hai and Hu Yin points in the body, which have these kind of magnetic resonance kind of connection point with the Dantian, and starts to pull Qi and Jing into the Dantian and build the field. Cool like calisthenics. What's up, brother? Derek Trevino says, what's up, Johnathan? Just curious, are you familiar with the Taoist sets of 9? If so, what are your general opinions on it? I think you're talking about like how they often do things in sets of 9. This is a numerology thing. In Taoism, they're all about the number 3, yin yang yuan. And so 9 is basically a number of completion. So if you're going to do something, if you're doing a practice, then to say, well, okay, do it 9 times, and then that kind of creates this completion energy of it. That's basically my understanding of it. So yeah, and I follow this as well. I often teach things like, okay, do it 9, 18, 36 times. I don't think it's like I've done exercises, 7 or 8 times versus 9, and my head didn't blow up. I didn't notice any major difference. I think it's more just I think when you get more activated, like higher levels of your energy bodies and things, this stuff becomes more important for most people. It's not going to make a difference, like if you do it 9 specifically, but I think it's good in general just to follow that, whatever. Sean says, how should we finish a session of self-cultivation to avoid sexual frustration and blue balls? Well, how you finish is, can be helpful, but I think the most important thing is how you do the session itself, right? Because if you're like, using visual imagery, you're like watching porn, or like looking at imagery, or like just fantasizing really, really hard, intense sexual images the whole time, and you're just like going, stimulating extremely intensely, just going right up to maximum arousal at the very beginning. You're just like right on the edge of ejaculation over and over. You're probably going to have blue balls doing that no matter what you do. You're probably going to, have that excessive fiery energy no matter what you do in that situation, right? You can do some things to pull it back out a bit at the end. But overall, the whole process is important, right? So let's talk about kind of start to finish how you would maybe have a self cultivation session to not have sexual frustration and blue balls. Start by getting in your body, getting relaxed, getting very. I like to do like doing some deep breathing for a few minutes, or like a progressive relaxation type exercise. What I like to do is just lay on the ground and just go through all my body parts and just relax. Like, okay, I'm focusing on my head. You can do the thing where you like tense, then relax it, or just like feel like it's melting as you breathe, as you exhale, feel the tension melt from this area. Go through your whole body until you feel really, really relaxed. You'll have a much better container to hold sexual energy and arousal by doing that. That'll kind of get you a little more grounded, a little more open, right? And then do a little bit of like microcosmic orbit, orgasmic breathing, moving the energy through you start to create this flow of your sexual energy through the orbit before you're even aroused. And that will, I think, kind of change the dynamic of it as well. Another great thing to do is to breathe the sexual energy up into the heart, breathing between the heart center and your sexual center to establish this interconnection, because this has been coming up a lot recently. And so I'm really looking into this. And when you're self-cultivating, if you have this overly obsessive, overly lustful approach to it, like you're just trying to like get off and like, it's a very different mindset that will pull you into a lower expression of orgasm and sexuality. Not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it's just not going to be as expansive as if you focus on feelings of love and compassion instead of focusing on like, the thoughts, the fantasy imagery of like body parts and things like that, which is very stimulating. And maybe you can start with that, but like moving more into just feeling love, opening your heart through the process, relaxing your body versus just pumping away and edging really hard. Instead of that, stimulate yourself very, very slowly. Think of it more as like a massage. Touch your body as you would want your lover to touch you. Get your whole body aroused in the process. And then focus on keeping your breath deep and smooth. Keep your entire body very, very relaxed. And then you're just drawing the sexual energy through your body. Feeling love in your heart. You can even place a hand on your heart. So if you stay in that space throughout a self-cultivation session, it will be much different than just edging, right? It's a very different experience. And then to finish, if you have a lot of like arousal, you want to move it from your genitals, you can use the power lock practice. That's a great way to pull it out. Massaging your whole genital area, massaging the testicles, the perineum will help to kind of, avoid any stagnance. Sometimes I'll do like an ice bath or like a cold shower after as well if I'm feeling really heated up. But do some inner smile, do some healing sounds to clear heat. There you go. Stephen Watts says, I thought semen retention increases your aura and supercharges it though. Yes, it does. But again, like I said, you can feel anyone's aura if they have one, right? But yeah, semen retention will make it a bit more expanded and magnetic. Clayton Glasser says, tips for overcoming pornography and visual fantasy addiction. Well, as far as porn addiction, just create new habits for yourself, new ways of getting high, getting a fix that aren't, that are a little bit better for you, right? Having some creative outlets, socializing with friends, putting your energy into, being productive, living in your purpose, like doing things that excite you, really like putting your energy into other things, right? And as far as overcoming this visual fantasy addiction, it's really about getting more embodied with your sexual experience, right? And again, guys tend to be very addicted to like just the visual aspects of sex, the body parts and things like that, which pulls us more into the lower center to only experience kind of this lustful experience of sex, which again is fine, but like it's limiting when that's all you can experience. So what I recommend is that practicing qigong, practicing breath work, the sexual kung fu basics, that should become part of your daily routine. But also, as far as like practicing, check out my video called Karezza, Karezza. But basically, getting your sexual experience where you practice not having any visual stimulation, no fantasy, and just feeling your body. Yes, you may not become as aroused in the beginning, but that's fine. You're rewiring yourself. You're opening up to a new experience. And I think it's again when you do start to experience this internal based experience of sexual pleasure and orgasm, it's a lot different. And it really pulled me out of a lot of my old habits. Sean 1996 boys, what are your top 5 ways to transmute your sexual energy? Meditation, qigong, yoga, Definitely, the sexual kung fu practice, working with the microcosmic orbit, testicle breathing, orgasmic breathing, non-ejaculatory sex, exchanging it with a partner, creativity. I make music. Got my guitars back here. I love to create music, and that's a big way that I channel my sexual energy. Creating content, creating videos I make, creating my courses, whatever, sharing my work with the world. Put my sexual energy into that. Um, Also, there's certain Taoist alchemical practices I do. The Dantian work itself can kind of you pull some of that gene out of the perineum and into your Dantian, but that can also kind of make you more horny as well. um, yeah, I think those are some great tips. Stillness practice, will just sitting meditation, just sitting, no thoughts. Oh, well, easy to say, right? Stilling down the mind, stilling down the breath, really sinking everything down to the Dantian helps to kind of still the Jing, as they call it in Taoist practice. Sacred Wild Man says, do women experience the same depletion as men while ejaculating sacred fluid? No, not in my experience. It actually can be quite energizing for women. It can be a bit of a release, but it's not, because the fluid that they release is not the same as sperm. Sperm is a powerhouse of nutrients, minerals, life force, and it's the most refined essence of the body. The ejaculatory fluid for the women is not that. It's more of just a watery fluid. There may be a few like trace minerals and things like that, but it's not nearly the same as that for men. Crosby Wood says, I suffer from welfare stamp monkey syndromes. Any advice? I have no idea what that is. Maybe you can explain what that is. Stephen Watts says, with the monologue near the end of transformational breathwork about letting go of the past self and becoming a new, should we repeat it internally like affirmations or just simply listen to it? So yeah, this is a practice from the course. Basically, it's a good question to ask in the course group, but basically, what I do before one of these sessions is just you can say it out loud, like have like an affirmation. But for me, it's more effective. What I usually do is like see myself, like put myself in the sense, like feeling what that feels like. Like, what if you've accomplished that transformation you want to make? How would that version of you feel? How would you feel in that moment, having gone through that transformation? What does your surroundings look like? What does your life look like? And just feel yourself in that space like it's already happened. That's, I think, the most effective to like set something up like that. Excuse me. David Sigmund says, what are your thoughts on fasting or intermittent fasting? Do you do this? I heard it can increase libido. I've done it in the past. I was pretty into intermittent fasting. I think it's been a couple years. I think it's been a year and a half since I was doing it. And honestly, I didn't notice a significant change in my libido. Um, so for some, the thing with fasting is it's really great for some people, and for some people it's not, right? There's no like one size fits all thing for everyone, I would say. So if you do it and you have higher libido, that's great. It's probably good for you. For me, it didn't make a significant difference, but it was definitely good for me for a period of time, I think. Overall, though, I was, because I lift weights and I'm on a certain, meal plan. We could say I have to get a certain caloric intake. And so when I was eating in a very small window, I was just like gorging myself, and it was actually like upsetting my digestion, things like that. So I was actually feeling worse after a while. So like, okay, I'm gonna go back to not intermittent fasting. And I felt a lot better, my energy levels and everything. So you have to listen to your body versus like just doing what's trending and like, oh, everyone should be doing this because, I think after some practice, you start to get out of like kind of like the trends and things and understand what's actually good for you and supportive for you. Your body will tell you what it needs. Derek Trevino says, health of the internal organs, read about it from a book by Dr. Stephen Chang. I'm not sure if you had more to that or if there was a question there or what. It might have not. Sometimes things you guys type and don't show up in the chat on YouTube for whatever reason. So Tommy Versetti, awesome brother. Stephen Watts says, how can you know if you're doing the double helix breath correctly? I mean, if you're breathing into the belly, breathing in the chest, that's it. Illumined Way says, I read that getting into a healthy receptivity with self pleasure and sexuality allows you to be able to receive more financial abundance. Absolutely. I think that your sex and your pleasure and your ability to receive in the bedroom very much relates to your financial state as well. Like receiving money. Money is just energy exchange, just like sex. Sex is an energy exchange. When you have limiting beliefs, you have guilt and shame and feelings of unworthiness around sexuality. It's going to affect other areas of your life. So when you heal this, most people do have this, by the way, but when you heal this, when you start to release the shame around, exploring your own body and things like that, and you create this flow of energy within yourself and within, your relationships, the world around you, it opens up your finances as well. It's been my experience. I had a dramatic shift in my financial experience when I really got into sexual kung fu. Aaron M says, how does coffee affect people's energy in the broad scheme, such as depletion? I'm debating on how much it would be helpful. I think overall, if your goal is to have more energy, coffee is not a good idea. You're stimulating your adrenals to release the reserve energy, right? They release this cortisol. You feel all jacked up because you're tapping into your energetic reserves. It's basically like spending from your savings account. So, like, yeah, it seems like you have more right now, but over time, it starts to deplete you, right? Coffee specifically depletes the kidney energy, which ties into your sexual energy, and your overall kidney energy is your body's battery, basically, right? So that's why most people drinking a lot of coffee, a lot of caffeine in general, they become adrenally depleted. I had to completely quit caffeine because it was, when I started practicing qigong, I became very, very sensitive to caffeine. Like I would have some in the morning, and I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. So I cut it out, and I felt much better, much more overall, more energy, more sustained energy. No jitters, no up down. And of course, for some people, again, this kind of comes back to like body types. Like some people have like slow metabolism, they're kind of like more heavy set constitution. A little bit of caffeine can actually be beneficial for them. But like someone like me, I'm a little more light, floaty constitution. Caffeine is not very good for me. It's a more sustainable and efficient to build up your adrenals, to exercise, balance your lifestyle, than to just, pound some caffeine. Michael Benjamin Canton, what's up, brother? Says, how do you manage balancing your attachment to mentors, especially early on in learning something powerful like this? I think it's a very good question. We typically tend to project, parental things, mommy, daddy stuff onto, people we see as teachers and things like that. And I definitely went through this, like when I was first, I would say really on my path to training, when I was studying with teachers, and I really like had people on this has been a theme, I would say, in the past 10 years of my life, where like I would put these people on pedestals, like people I followed, maybe their work or study with the person. I'm like, oh, they're like, they know everything there is to know. They're perfect. They've got everything figured out. And then it's like they say, never meet your heroes, whatever. It's like you start to spend time with them and you start to say, oh, they don't really have it all together. They're actually just human like me. They've got their issues too. Sometimes they got big issues that they're hiding and things like that, so that, especially having been like manipulated by some of my mentors and things like that, it almost actually made me become a bit of a skeptical and a very, well, I don't want to say cynical, but like, more of a skeptical person, where I'm like, really like, okay, they say these things, but are they really living it? Are they like, do they embody this? That's why I became less kind of like enchanted by the words people say, and more like, okay, that's great, but like, what are they doing? What do they create in their life? That's kind of more what I look for now. So, I mean, I guess the only thing I can say, Michael, is like, just know that don't put power outside of yourself. It's like whatever you see in these people is actually that which you have within you, right? I mean, we've never heard that before, or whatever. But it's true that I don't know, knowing that you are your greatest teacher first and foremost, I guess, and I don't know, it's part of the journey of learning, I guess. I hope that's helpful. Tommy Vercetti says, "How can I deal with the pain of writing music and nobody listening to it? I mean, it feels good to create, but then I lose motivation because what's the point if it doesn't reach a lot of people?" I feel you, and I definitely went through that. I was in my striving, starving musician stage. I remember, I was a pretty well. I still am. I still play guitar, but I as much work and practice time I put into like qigong and social kung fu exercises now, that was me with music and guitar. I used to practice for like 3 hours a day for years, right? And I got pretty good at it, right? But I'd go out and play. I remember I'd be out playing in like a bar or club, whatever, and it's like I just knew like no one really cared. It's like they're like, okay, there's music, whatever, but it's like I knew that like it wasn't really being heard in some ways, and there was always this pain within me from that. I remember, and um, I don't know. For me, the music journey has been a very intense one for me. I would really say it's my spiritual path. Right now I'm studying jazz theory, harmony, jazz harmony, some classical stuff too. And it's like for me, music started when I stopped being like, okay, music is like my career. When I put that aside, I was just like, I love music. I'm gonna play. It's gonna be a hobby, and it's like wherever that goes, it's fine. But like that's when my relationship to it really changed, and I stopped caring about like is it going to reach people? And is it going to make me money? Whatever. And I just like I started creating for myself. It's like I create music that I love because it's me expressing myself. And if I share that, people, great. If they want to hear it, whatever, I'm enjoying it. So I don't know. It's kind of that the suffering of the artist, right? I think that's another thing that made me take a long break from music was like I had a lot of pain in that identity, the identity I had as a musician. And when I completely stopped identifying as a musician, it a lot of things shifted for me. I stepped in this whole different identity and I don't know, it's been an interesting path, I would say. But for me, music is my spiritual path because it's like you're studying relationship, really, vibration, and how different vibrations relate to each other, how they harmonize with each other, how you can uh, go from tension to resolution. Which and as I study that, I feel like I start to embody it. I can't really explain how, but it's like it starts to develop my consciousness. When I play music, when I pick up my guitar and play, I get into a totally different state of consciousness that's very spiritual for me. So learn to do it for yourself, I guess. And if the people appreciate it, it's great. If not, don't let it get to you. Technostic DJ says, any practice for opening the front path, the front channel? Yeah, it can be a little more tricky for guys to open, but what's really helped me is focusing on grounding, releasing down to the earth. Zhuang practice. Again, check out my, standing meditation practice on YouTube. This really helps to open up the sinking current, the earth currents of energy, front channel, settling down. Relaxation, also connecting more to your feeling sense, your emotional side, expressing through your throat, speaking your truth, creating from your truth, opening your heart, being able to feel. There's a lot to it, I guess, but it just takes practice as well. Working with the orbit practice, doing qigong practice over time, it will start to open up more and more. It's not something that's going to probably happen in like, oh, I went from really close to here to really open overnight. Maybe it can, but in general, it's something that's going to kind of like how water slowly wears its way through rock. It's that kind of development sometimes. Stephen Watts says, can you play this riff on the guitar? I don't know. If you guys really want to hear something, it's going to sound like crap through my speakers, but I can bust out something here if people really want to hear something. My song cover says, what foods make you feel charged with energy? Like which ones help for sexual energy the most? I like eggs a lot. Of course, pasture raised eggs. I've been doing more like pasture raised meats and things like that. I get a lot of like raw energy from that. It's very grounding for me, really supportive of my sexual energy. What else? I mean, I eat a lot of foods, but for different reasons, I will say. Tonkat Ali, I think I mentioned this one of the last slides, but I tried Tonkat Ali a lot of times, like a lot of different supplements. And honestly, I felt a little bit, but I tried dragon herbs. They're Tomcat, Tomkat. It's really, really potent. Like obvious, very, very sharp increase in my sexual energy. I was actually a bit surprised, like, holy shit, this stuff's potent. I can't take this every day because I just got, very, very Horny, crazy erections, like, more than normal, right? That's a great one for sure. Goji berries. That's another one. When I eat goji berries, I've noticed an obvious change in like just more energy, more of that gene kind of sexual energy. Those are some great things I would say. Kevin says, "What do you drink there?" This is a just a protein, basically protein smoothie I made. I just got out of the gym before I went live, so get my protein post workout. Ali Mir says, "My testicles are a bit stiff and sometimes become swollen. I went to a doctor. He said everything is fine. Does it mean I'm holding semen and achieving orgasm?" I don't know if you're holding semen and achieving orgasm. Only you can say that. Like, do you release your semen? If you don't ejaculate, if you don't have a retrograde ejaculation where it goes into the bladder and you urinate it out, then you probably haven't, ejaculated. But it could be a little bit of blue balls, a little bit of congestion there, which means that the energy is not quite circulating out of the sexual center. So, a little more practice opening up the channels, moving through the orbit. John Moo says, "How can I explore my body or use sound during self pleasure when I have a roommate? I mean, does your technique refer to people living alone? I can't have privacy in my house. What to do?" Okay, so like sound techniques. Well, a couple options. You could blare some loud music to cover it up, uh, some drum and bass, whatever, some rhythmic tribal music. You could use a pillow as well to cover up the sound. I don't know. Or just, maybe it's not really practical for you right now in your situation to use the sound methods. That's all right. You can tell your roommate, "Hey, I'm going to do some orgasmic yoga." So you may hear some weird sounds. Don't worry about it. I don't know. Those are some options. You could tell them that you're practicing sexual kung fu and that you're going to be making some using sound to move arousal. They'll be like, "All right, do what you got to do." Aaron M says, "Have you heard of Shilajit and what do you think of it?" Yeah, I take Shilajit. I take it, I think, 3 days a week. It's pretty good for sure. I mean, it has a lot of research on it and like showing that it has some kind of steroidal qualities to it and increases sperm production, things like that. So it's got lots of trace minerals that a lot of people don't get in their diets. So Shilajit's a great one for sure. It's like it's a if you don't know what it is, it's a basically a lot of like organic materials that over time have broken down and I think been like pressurized as well to form just this kind of organic like tarry resin. And you take it. It comes from the Himalayas. Also comes from like Siberian mountains. There's several sources for it. Jack Bronston says, "How can you tell the difference between real energetic movement in the body versus regular bodily sensations in the beginning, besides the obvious Kriya symptoms?" For me, the internal energy has a very specific flavor to it. I would say very specific feeling. To me, it feels like this, like a warm, bubbly, electrical, like radioactive hydraulic fluid with pressure as well. Kind of a watery, viscous quality to it too. That's what it feels like for me. So it kind of starts in my hands, or well, started in my hands when I first started feeling that. Started to spread through my forearms, started to spread through my whole arms, started to spread to my legs, my dantian, my torso. Now it's like it's a whole body thing. It feels amazing. So that's what it feels like for me. Oh, lost my Instagram feed. I don't even get a warning anymore. That's all right. Give me a second, guys. Gotta whoop, pull the Instagram feed back up. We're in our 1 hour break. All right. Instagram's back. All right. Where was I? Sean says, if you're on a streak of semen retention for like 6 to 8 weeks and you release, do you lose all the benefits straight away and lose your aura or energetic edge? Do you lose the attraction from females straight away? No, you don't. I used to be really obsessed with this for a while. Like, during the first days of retention, it was like, I'd be like, yeah, 3 days in, feeling good, feeling good. Then, like, if I accidentally ejaculated, it was like, oh no, like I lost it all. And not gonna have female attraction. No one's gonna. I got really obsessed with that, and I don't think it's a very healthy thing to obsess about because this kind of comes down to putting your power in like how others feel about you. If you're doing this because you want others to be impressed by you, like you're not really doing it for yourself. It's not coming from an internal thing. It's you're kind of acting out these childhood things that you need to please the people around you to be liked, right? So kind of look at that pattern first of all. I think that's important, right? But having said that, no, I don't think you lose everything. Like to go 8 weeks and then ejaculate is completely different than to go, you ejaculated yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before. That's when you're depleted. But no, I wouldn't worry about it. Like you're probably, yeah, you'll feel a little more mellow and stuff, but don't worry about it. Stephen Watts says, does transformational breath work transmute and move sexual energy around the body? I believe it does. I believe it. I mean, definitely moves energy through the body. How much it actually, you can also focus more specifically on the sexual energy, but it definitely it causes this uprising. I've done transformational breath work several times where at the end it felt like my testicles were like pulsing and the energy was like moving up my spine, like kind of a interesting phenomenon there. Lucas Veloso says, what's the minimum streak required between one ejaculation and another for a man to be able to experience a non-ejaculatory orgasm? Also, what's the best time of the day for ejaculation? So I think this depends on your overall kind of gene vitality level. Because if you're a super healthy virile man, it wouldn't matter if you ejaculated the day before, you could still have a non-ejaculatory orgasm that day. But if you're really depleted, it can take, maybe a few days to really build up to a state to where you have that strong, powerful sexual energy that is going to really activate your whole body, right? It's difficult to say, but you'll probably have more orgasmic experience, having gone at least a few days without ejaculating, I would say. As far as the best time of the day for ejaculation, I would say probably, definitely not first thing in the morning. I mean, it really depends, but general, like if you have like it's a day where you have a bunch of things to do, probably after you've done the important tasks you want to do, maybe in the evening. So you know, um, so you have a little time to like, because for me, actually, I ejaculate about once every 4 to 6 weeks now. And it's actually, I often feel quite energized after it, right? Because this is a big turning point in my practice where ejaculation completely stopped depleting me, right? Because I built my energy back up because I'm not doing it frequently. I found that if I do it right before sleep, I'm actually like still energized afterwards, right? So this is part of the sexual kung fu practice as well, like harnessing that semen power, drawing it into your body and storing it so that you're kind of like it's like you're releasing an empty shell, so to speak. So it's not that big of a deal. So I'd say probably evening, I guess. Herbage Meerkat says, when you're doing testicle breathing, do you move the energy along the meridians, meaning from the testicles to the crown chakra, then to the sacral chakra, or do you just move it up then down? I mean, you can do whatever you want. There's no like you have to do it this way. It just depends like where you're trying to bring the energy. Like what are you doing with it, right? In general, if I'm doing just like a quick testicle breathing practice, like, okay, I'm gonna do 5 minutes testicle breathing. Usually I'll just kind of breathe into the testicles a little bit and then just draw it up to the crown a few times, let it soak into the brain. Then I'll do the full orbit. So draw it to the crown and then down the front of the body, sort of the dantian, right? If I'm taking like a longer time to it, I'll draw it up to one energy center for a little while, draw it up to the next, draw it to the next. There's a lot of ways to work with it. There's not like you have to do it this exact way every time. With enough practice, you find that all this stuff is pretty intuitive. It's like eventually you're just playing with the energy. You don't have to follow like a rule book anymore. It's just like, you start to feel it. And you're like, okay, I do this, this happens. I do that, that happens. I'm going to play with this versus like, well, this guy said this, so I have to do that every time. It evolves as you practice. Do I have recommendations for partner work? I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but in general, it's good that both partner has their own practice. They have their own cultivation practice where they're managing their energy, managing their emotions, not just taking everything out on each other like a lot of couples do. Blame everyone else, blame them for everything. So each person's processing their own stuff and keeping themselves clear through the practice and working with their sexual energy. And then they come together and, you can connect your energy pathways together, right? Orgasmic waves together. There's a lot to be done with that, right? I talk about this in my course, the partner application of things. Sean says, how long do you recommend doing sexual kung fu daily? It depends which practice you're doing, right? But overall, I recommend a minimum of like 20 to 30 minutes of daily practice, doing like your qigong or breath work and stuff. Whatever time you have is great, but basically you should enjoy your practice overall. Like, yeah, in the beginning, when you first start a daily practice, when you're used to not having a daily discipline, it's a little more like you have to force yourself to do it. Like, okay, like I'm going to do this thing for 30 minutes because I want to do it. And ideally, within a few months, it should become enjoyable to where you start to look forward to your practice because you're like, yeah, I get lit up from my practice. I get high from it. I feel amazing when I do my practice. That's how it was for me. And that's what got me into practicing 3 or 4 hours a day. And so, just do a good mix the practices, right? You're doing your clearing practices, you're doing your building practices, you're circulating energy, you're building energy, you're balancing it all, working with sexual energy as well. Key Brace says, what is sexual kung fu? Sexual kung fu is the skill and discipline of working with your sexual energy. Kung fu is a skill that's attained over a period of consistent, hard training. And so that's what it takes to master your sexual energy. Sexual kung fu is the art of working to cultivate sexual energy and all the foundational work required to do so, to integrate into every aspect of your being versus it just being an unconscious impulse. You use your sexual energy you channel it into developing yourself, developing your mind, your body, and your path on this planet. Ray Lubin says, thoughts on Semenax? I'm not sure what that is. Is that one of these like male enhancement supplements? You have to be careful with these. I'm not sure if that's. Let me just look here. Semenax. Okay, male climax. It just looks like another one of these male enhancement things, which often have some of the similar ingredients, and often they're like lower. So some of these like kind of more generic ones, it's just like low quality herbs that they put together and market really well. Like, yeah, this will make you, have rock hard erections. It'll make your penis grow 10 inches overnight. Some of them work, some of them don't, but you can just look at like the ingredients they have and just buy the herbs direct, and they'll probably be find a good supplier of your herbs basically, right? If you're going to take these things. Calvin Ham says, can this help with brain fog? Can what help with brain fog? In general, the sexual kung fu practices, sexual energy cultivation, yes, will definitely help with brain fog and clarity of mind. Dan M says, how long can you hold a horse stance for? I don't really do horse stance training anymore. I was doing it for several minutes at a time, but I don't know. It's kind of more of just a physical practice. Like, okay, I'm strengthening my leg muscles, which is great, but I do different exercises for that because rather than holding a stance for, 5, 10, 15 minutes, I'd rather just, do some heavy squats and get the same thing. Right. But I do like a Qigong wide stance practice. It's not quite horse stance, but that kind of gets the development as far as like the legs, engagement, things like that. And like the Tai Chi stances I hold, where you're like in one leg positions, low stances, holding that. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm not really doing the sustained horse stance training at this point. Derek says, my girlfriend's asking if you're gonna do videos with Mariah again. She would watch those videos with me. Yeah, I'll get Mariah on again to do a live for sure. John White, same name. That's true. What's up, John White? Lucas says, random question. Have you ever practiced any martial arts and have you experienced any real combat? Uh, First part, yes. I practice martial arts currently. I've moved to like internal martial arts, like Tai Chi, Xingyi, which are kind of really just advanced Qigong practices that have combat applications. No, I've never experienced any real combat. I've never been in a fight in my life. I just don't have that like conflict energy where I, attract physical conflict in my life. I don't think I'll, it's like a lot of people feel like they have to like protect, I need to buy guns and protect myself. And it's like, I think when you have this mindset, you start to attract more of these things in your life. And I don't know, I'm a peaceful person. I've never been in a fight. Aaron M says, how do females react if you notice differently before and after you started cultivating energy? Well, I'm not really, dating anymore. I have a, I have a long-term partner right now. So I can't really say in that market how things would be now. But I will say that there was a definite change, when I was single, when I was doing sexual kung fu, like how, um, the interactions I was having with women then before I was doing sexual kung fu, I was pretty shy and just kind of like, I was a lot more feminine before. And then I started practicing sexual kung fu. It's like, women started becoming attracted to me. Like they would go after me. It was an interesting change of the dynamic, which makes sense because my testosterone was increased. My energy was much more young and masculine and just kind of exuding that. Okay. Ra's asking if I've ever read anything by Samuel on Weor. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. If so, what do you think about the AZF Arcane? I've read some of his stuff, and I think it's kind of more the Gnostic stuff, right? I will say like there's interesting, and I think he talks about some of the sexual stuff too, and some of it was a little out there for me. I mean, I'm out there, but I didn't vibe with all of it, but some interesting stuff. K Breeze says, have you ever gotten in the zone where you can see the aura around you, vibe energy? I can see my energy. Like when I'm doing practice, I can see like streams. It's almost like the staticky thing in the air coming out of my fingers. Or like interestingly, I do some like staff training, like Xingyi Chuan staff and like Tai Chi sword, which the object, it's not really because I want to learn to slash people with sword or hit them with staff. It's the object becomes an extension of your body really, and your chi starts to project through it and actually like amplifies your chi. And so I'll see it like streaming out of the object I'm holding as well. It's interesting, and I'll see, I can see the field around my body. I don't see colors very much. I have seen like the auric colors. Sometimes I'll see that, but yeah, but I'm not the most like visually oriented person. Like I don't know. Yeah, that stuff's not as interesting to me as like feeling the energy, right? Stephen Watts is, if I get a tiny bit hot, my cheeks get super red. Anything you know of that could help my skin be more clear? Just asking because you seem to have very good skin. Redness in the cheeks, being super hot. I mean, it can be related to like, I don't know, like heart energy, liver energy, just heat in the body. Pericardium, triple warmer system. It can mean you have like, it can mean there's heat in these organs. So cooling those down. John White says, I've been following you for a while. Any suggestions for men about for men with a vasectomy? This is hard to think about, not blowing my wad, but I'm super interested. So I'm not exactly sure if this is what you're asking, but as far as like the dynamic for men who've had a vasectomy, is that physically you can have the ejaculatory orgasm, but no sperm actually comes out. But you still have the refractory period. You still feel like you've ejaculated just as much as you did before the vasectomy, right? That seems to be what happens to men who've had it. So this shows that you're still kind of having the maybe the hormonal changes that happen in the body with the ejaculatory orgasm, which shows you this more like the peak orgasm itself, and not just the release of semen. It's more of like this energetic thing occurring. So, for my understanding, and I don't have a vasectomy myself, so take it with a grain of salt. But my understanding is that men who've had a vasectomy benefit from doing the sexual kung fu practices the same way as a man who is not, right? Meaning that you're learning to have non-ejaculatory orgasms. John Miles says, do you propose psychoanalysis to people who face simple issues because there's a more Eastern type of therapy called logotherapy, which focuses more on how to find meaning in life? What do you think? I mean, how I help people, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychoanalyst. My thing is I give you tools, like you heal yourself. That's been my path, right? Like, I've been to many healers and things like that and had, amazing experiences and healings. But for me, the most profound shifts occurred from me doing these practices myself. Qigong is a self-healing practice because you put the power within yourself. You say, I do this practice, I move the life force of my body, I clear the blockages. I don't have to go into this thing and say, okay, this is what it came from. This is where, what this blockage means. This is, the experience came from. You don't even know that. You just get the damn thing out of your body, basically, right? And so I don't know, that's my approach. Is I give you the tools, like maybe sometimes I give a little more, mindset stuff and whatnot. But the most important thing is the tool, the practice itself. It's been the most efficient for me. You remove the blockages from the inside out by doing the practice yourself. Khaled Amara says, for Angion method, which one do you recommend? Angion 2.0 or 1.0, and how long is the session? 20 minutes or more? If you're just starting this, the 1.0 or 2.0 methods seem to be solid for most people in the beginning. I don't recommend starting with 20 minutes. I would recommend starting with 5 to 10 minutes because you're probably going to be overtraining. Yeah, I mean, check out the Angion method stuff. There's the guy who made it has plenty of advice on it. But yeah, follow the recommended schedules. But again, I recommend starting shorter periods of time in the beginning and then slowly adding more time. It really is like it's a workout for your penis. It's just like bodybuilding. Like if you go too hard too quickly, you can overtrain and you won't get results. Sean says, do you think the benefits are worth the time it takes to do these sexual kung fu exercises? Do you think I would be spending 3 or 4 hours of my day doing this stuff if I was getting nothing from it? I have much, I have much better things to do than to waste my time. I will say that. Yes, the time put into it is very, very, very much worth the benefits you get from it. The benefits are phenomenal. More energy, more clarity, more confidence, more drive, more feeling of connection, better sleep, better sex, better confidence, self-esteem, health. Every aspect of my life is impacted by the practice I do. And that's why I am very diligent about my practice. My song cover says, have you decalcified your pineal gland? If so, what did you do? Just the regular things like no fluoride, etc. How do you know when the third eye is open? Okay. To the best of my ability, I've decalcified my pineal gland. I've done it, I've done a lot of stuff for it. Maybe I haven't had it like x-ray to really see, but how my hormones have balanced out and my sleep cycles and my ability to think for myself and not be, under hypnosis like a lot of people on this planet are. I think I've been fairly successful. What I did was completely eliminated tap water, fluoride, avoiding aluminum, which is in a lot of stuff. It's in the air. Heavy metal detox. There's a lot of ways to do this. Eating cilantro. Sauna. I have an infrared sauna I use often. Japanese foot baths are like the Japanese foot pads. They pull heavy metals out of your feet. Heavy metal detox, very important. You'll get the aluminum, the fluoride out of your system. Other things that decalcify the pineal gland: skate liver oil, fermented skate liver oil. I think Blue Ice is the brand. I take that It's been shown to help with that as well. Um, the list goes on. You can look it up. Also, I have a friend who zapped me with a Tesla machine, like sent electricity through. I could feel it like it going into, I guess, my pineal gland. He said it was helping decalcify as well. So that was interesting. How do you know when the third eye is open? That's a good question. If you ask a lot of different people, you hear different answers. I know people who have full blown multidimensional vision. They see things that we can't see because all these energetic layers, these dimensional layers are. It's kind of like switching channels on television, right? All the signals are in the air, but depending what frequency you're okay. Well, let's say Wi-Fi. Depending what frequency it's tuned to, there will be a different image on the screen. That's how our eyes and our systems are. And supposedly, with the pineal gland, you hear different things where this is actually coming from. Is it really the pineal gland? But some people can tune in and see other realities, basically, right? We all know people who see angels and ghosts and things like that. And um, some say that's when your third eye is truly open, is like when you have multidimensional vision. Some people just say it's when your intuition strong and you can visualize things. I don't know. I don't really obsess about this too much. I think it's more to focus on your whole energetic system than just, a lot of people get obsessed, like the third eye in the crown, but my sexual center is a mess. My Dantian's non-existent. My throat's all blocked, cultivate your whole energetic system together. John Mouse says, any advice about the V word, the jabby jab? I remember you were not in favor of the past. What's your opinion now? I'm all about it. Everyone should get one. I got my fifth one. No, I am not getting this thing ever. Interesting. It turned into like, yeah, here we go. We haven't gone on one of these in a while, but we're going to do it. All right. It started out, 2 weeks, we're going to be at home. Everything's going to be fine. Then, that turned into a year. And then it was like, okay, if everyone gets this thing, everything will go back to normal. And there's a new one. So you need another one. We're on like the fourth one now. What's changed? Nothing. There's countries that have a 100% rate. Everyone's gotten this thing. They're still having high rates of, the thing, the going around, still completely locked down. This is not about what they're telling us it is. That's all I'm going to say. All right. Why is there so many very, very high-level doctors risking their entire careers saying that this thing is dangerous and that it needs to be taken down? They're getting completely censored, taken down. What's that all about? I don't know. Yeah. Be careful what you put in your body, guys. Don't let people manipulate you through anything. Anytime something is coming from a place of fear, they're putting fear in your system to force you into doing something. That person does not have your highest interest in their mind. Be careful. Aaron M says, how could you go about turning video games into Qigong? I don't know if you can really do that, but because you have to have your mind in your body to do Qigong. When you're playing video games, your mind is outside of your body. So don't try to mix these things. But if you could keep your awareness on your dull link points, the hands, stream some energy through your hands while you're playing video games. Try that. Jerry Cardano says, do you subscribe to the idea of sexual transformation as in Kundalini rising? I mean, yeah, it's definitely a thing I've experienced. I've had several Kundalini experiences in my life, but I think it goes beyond just that, right? Just the sexual energy rising. What rises must come down as well. So you want to create a circuit, not just a one-way trip upwards. If you want to ground it, right? That's being embodied. B says, do you recommend any Qigong books or YouTube channels? Yours is the best. Oh, I'm glad you feel that way. Books. My favorite Qigong book is The Way of Energy by Lam Kam Chuen. It's a book on Jianzhuang. Really nice, practical, not a lot of baggage or dogma, just like really, really nice practical viewpoint of a Qigong practice. I really recommend that book. Opening the Energy Gates of Your Body by Bruce Francis is another great one. What else? I think those are some pretty good starting points with Qigong books. You don't want to, overload yourself in the beginning, but there's a lot more. I'm kind of blanking right now. I know I have a whole library of Qigong books. Scott Meredith stuff is phenomenal as well. Like the really, really potent, like tangible, energetic development. Scott Meredith really changed my trip as far as Qigong practice. Montauk Chia's books are great too. They tend to be a bit excessive with like, a million practices in them. But overall, they're pretty good. Okay, paintball liquid. How to perform a reverse Kegel and how it feels. I haven't found a concise way to achieve this exercise. Okay, imagine feel like you're trying to push out a poop, like how you would push to push out a poop. You engage your abs, you push, and if you place your hand on your perineum, your it will bulge out. That's how you know you're doing a reverse Kegel, right? Another thing I think you'll find helpful is to get into a deep squat position, like a Malasana pose, and just breathe deeply into your belly and your pelvic floor. You'll feel your pelvic floor expand and puff out. That's another great way to do reverse Kegels. There you go. Sean says, if I feel a bit of pressure in my head while doing reverse Kegels, am I doing them too hard? How do you know how hard to do them? Yes, you're doing it too hard. well, maybe like a little bit of pressure, but if you're like, oh, if it's uncomfortable, it's too much. You don't need to squeeze or push super, super hard, just enough to like feel it kind of release and expand a bit, right? That's why we really like doing them in the squatting position. Zeke the Geek, the perineum is the taint. It's between your genitals and your anus. It's the base of the torso. Dalib says, have you ever used an orgonite pyramid before? Going right here. I made this one. I also sleep in a a copper pyramid filled. The copper poles are filled with orgonite. There's a giant orgonite capstone. My brother Ryan in Sedona made it for me. I sleep in that thing. It's yeah. So yeah, I've used orgonite pyramids. Poop and let go. Is that how it works? Sorry, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but like it's like you push out, like yeah, like you're trying to push out poop and then let go. Hold it out for a little while and then let go. And that's your reverse Kegel. Zach Zacy one says, how is your face so colorful and shiny? Do you put makeup on? I definitely don't put makeup on. I don't know. It's just how my face is. I also went to the gym before I jumped on here and sweated my balls off doing a workout. So maybe that's part of it as well. Sean says, can you do reverse Kegels standing up in a normal position? Yes, you can, but I think it's more, you can. I think it's better to do it either like lying down, kind of sitting down with your legs open, or squatting as well. But you can totally do them standing up as well, kind of lightly. Lucia says, can't sleep, drink coffee at 11, 14 hours later, it's midnight here and I can't fall asleep. Yeah, that's why I don't drink coffee. If I drink in the morning, I'd be up all night. Go for a run, take an ice bath, meditate, do some practice, whatever. You might as well, put the time into doing something, some practice, right? Or burn it out of your system. Sweat. If you can like sauna or do some intense cardio, sweat it out. But yeah, I can't do caffeine. Aaron M says, how can you develop posture for sitting in a chair well? Just like an effective method, do yoga, do stretching. You can also do like, squats, things like that. But you have to strengthen the postural muscles and then it'll be effortless to sit in good posture. So also just doing it, Stephen Watts says, how can you enlarge your manhood? The best method I would recommend is Angiom method because it develops the blood vessels in your penis. It starts to grow them. And that's the foundation for like real, we could say holistic penis growth. A lot of the like stretching methods, jelqing methods are dangerous. First of all, second of all, they don't actually develop the blood vessels as well, which can't really support any length you get from it. Therefore, you're going to have weak erections. Way better to have strong erections than to have a longer penis, I would say. All right, Lucius. I'll sing a song. My song cover says, what's your view on handstands? Do you think it's good for circulating sexual energy, or can that time be better spent on other ways? Like, what's your go-to favorite practice or move? I don't think that inversions circulate your sexual energy, but they are really great for you. I have an inversion rack I use every night because I like to spend long periods of time in inversions before I go to sleep. Really, really good for your system, good for the back as well. Delab says, do you work with rocks or minerals for opening up the lower dantian? No, nothing really beats the actual practice of sitting in the dantian. No rock, no crystal, no external thing is going to do this for you. Can kind of help you center your awareness there. Like you stick something there, it will help you kind of feel that point and anchor your mind there. But no, nothing's going to do your practice for you. All right, guys. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm going to wrap it up. Hope you guys are doing well. Much love to everyone and enjoy your weekend. I will see you next time. Take care, guys.